Every year, Americans collectively fork over trillions of dollars to the government in taxes. Yet most of us have little idea where that money actually goes. You pay your taxes, fill out your forms, and then what? Your paycheck is smaller, but you're not sure what you're getting in return. Are the roads getting paved? Are schools getting funded? Is the military as strong as it could be? The answers may surprise you and leave you wondering, what does Uncle Sam really do with your hard-earned money? For most of us, taxes feel like a given, an unavoidable burden. You pay, and the world keeps turning. But what happens behind the curtain? What happens to the dollars that you, me, and millions of others fork over each year? It turns out the story of your tax money is not just about roads, schools, and infrastructure. It's a far more complex and at times controversial journey. Let's start with a question that we rarely stop to ask. What if we could follow the path of a dollar? Where would it go first? To the military? Perhaps. What about healthcare? Education? Public welfare? Where does it go? And what do you get for your share? Imagine for a second you're at the helm of the United States government, looking over the vast amount of tax revenue that rolls in every year. It's not a small sum. In 2022 alone, the US government collected about $4.9 trillion in taxes. A mind-boggling number. The kind of number that makes you think, if I had that much money, I could change the world. But where does it go? A good chunk of it, $1 trillion, in fact, gets funneled into the military. You might have expected this. The US military is one of the most well-funded institutions in the world, boasting a budget that dwarfs many nations' entire GDPs. And while a lot of us don't give it much thought, the massive machinery of the Pentagon runs off these tax dollars. The cost of personnel, weapons, research, and operations all pile up. But the military isn't the only beneficiary. Another enormous portion of this tax pie, over $1 trillion, finds its way into healthcare. This is a tricky one because it includes both Medicare and Medicaid, programs that keep millions of Americans alive. But don't think of it as just a big, faceless bureaucracy. Medicare, for example, provides health care to seniors. Over 160 million Americans rely on it to cover their medical expenses. And when you consider the aging population, that cost is only set to increase. Yet, the story doesn't end there. What about those living in poverty, or those who can't afford basic health care? That's where Medicaid comes in, providing vital care to over 70 million low-income individuals. It's one of the largest health programs in the world. And while many of us might never use it directly, we can't escape the reality that millions rely on it. Now let's take a detour. Have you ever been caught in traffic on a hot summer day, wondering why it takes so long for the road to be fixed? Well, infrastructure. You know, roads, bridges, public transportation systems is another major recipient of tax money. The $400 billion of your taxes go toward maintaining and upgrading the nation's infrastructure every year. And when you look around at crumbling highways and deteriorating bridges, it's easy to wonder, where does all that money go? But wait, there's more. We've all heard about Social Security, right? This program, which provides monthly benefits to over 65 million Americans, is another huge recipient of your tax dollars. If you've worked in the US for a number of years, you've probably paid into it yourself. And while the system's future is a subject of constant debate, it remains one of the country's largest and most significant welfare programs. Every year, Americans contribute nearly $1 trillion to Social Security alone. But here's the twist. It's not just for retirees. People with disabilities, survivors, and even certain family members benefit from it too. Now here's a thought. How many times have you cursed the taxes you pay for public services? Maybe you're frustrated by education, wondering why there's never enough funding for schools. In truth, education is a large part of the tax dollar equation. While the federal government spends around $70 billion annually on education, much of this funding goes to Pell Grants, special education programs, and K-12 schools. But here's the kicker. Most of the money for public education actually comes from us state and local taxes, not the federal government. So, if you're wondering why your local school district is always strapped for cash, this is where the local funding battle comes into play. But don't think for a second that everything tax money funds is easy to stomach. What about the interest on the national debt? Every year, taxpayers fork over hundreds of billions of dollars just to pay the interest on money the US government owes. $500 billion of tax dollars go to service the national debt, and that number is only expected to grow. It's one of those uncomfortable truths no one likes to talk about. The fact that your taxes are not just paying for things, but also keeping the wheels of big government debt spinning. As we piece together this puzzle of tax dollars, there's one area that remains controversial: foreign aid. It may surprise you to learn that the United States spends only about 1% of its budget on foreign aid, helping to provide humanitarian assistance, development programs, and military aid to countries around the world. While this is a relatively small portion of the overall budget, it remains a source of political debate. Is this money well spent? Should the US be more generous, or should we focus more on domestic issues? That's a question for another day. So let's step back for a moment and take stock. You've probably thought about your taxes in terms of your paycheck. You pay, but do you really understand the bigger picture? From defense and healthcare to social programs and infrastructure, the money you pay is woven into the fabric of American life. It's not just numbers on a tax form. It's a representation of what the government does or doesn't do with its resources. For many, tax money is a necessary evil, but one thing's for sure: it is a powerful force shaping the country. So the next time you wonder where your taxes go, just remember, each dollar tells a story of government priorities, global politics, and the lives of millions. Your taxes fund more than just roads and schools. They fund the future of a nation. So, as you sit back and think about where that money truly goes, remember that in a sense, you are the one writing that story, whether you realize it or not.